After my husband passed away, I left my 8-year-old daughter at my mother's house for a few days, thinking she'd be safe surrounded by family. But I was wrong, terribly wrong. The home I trusted became the place that shattered everything I believed in. And when I got that one phone call, I knew something unthinkable had happened. Before we dive into today's story, tell me something interesting. Which city are you watching from, and what's the one thing that makes your city truly special? I'm always amazed by how different every place feels through your eyes, so share yours in the comments below. Hi, my name is Rena, and I'm 33 years old. I live in Denver, Colorado, a city that feels both fast and quiet depending on where you stand. When people see me now, neatly dressed, focused, walking to work, they probably assume I've always been this composed. But the truth is, my calm comes from surviving storms I never thought I'd face. I grew up in a home where love was never evenly shared. My parents, Vera and Clark, had 2 children, my older brother, Trent, and me. From as far back as I can remember, Trent was the center of their world. His mistakes were boys being boys. My achievements were barely noticed. I learned early that silence was safer than expecting fairness. Still, I dreamed of building a life where kindness mattered more than status. When I was 25, I met Adam. He wasn't rich or flashy, but he was the first man who truly saw me. He listened, asked about my day, and remembered the small things that everyone else ignored. We married 2 years later in a modest ceremony, no grand gestures, no expensive hall, but full of real laughter. My parents attended out of obligation, not affection. They congratulated Adam more than me, as if marrying me was some kind of charity. I tried to ignore their coldness and focus on what I finally had: peace. Our daughter, Lila, was born 2 years later. She had Adam's smile, gentle, patient, disarming. When I held her for the first time, I promised myself she would never feel unloved the way I had. Life felt stable. Adam worked as a senior account manager at a beverage company that produced juices and smoothies. I handled most things at home, balancing part-time freelance work and motherhood. We didn't have luxury, but we had enough, and more importantly, we had joy. Then came the day that split my life in two. Adam was driving back from a client meeting when his car was hit by a speeding truck on I-25. The police said he died instantly. I remember holding the phone that night, hearing the words, "We're sorry, ma'am," and feeling my knees buckle. Grief didn't arrive like a storm. It seeped into every corner of my life. Suddenly, everything, his voice, his laughter, his mug on the counter, became memories I wasn't ready to keep or let go of. For Lila's sake, I tried to stay strong. She was only 8, far too young to understand why her father wasn't coming home. She would wait by the window, expecting him to walk in with his familiar grin. I would kneel beside her and whisper, "Daddy's watching us, baby." But inside, I was empty. Still, even in that darkness, a small part of me believed that Adam wouldn't want me to break. He'd want me to fight, to keep our little world alive. That belief became the spark I held on to, not knowing that my real test of strength was yet to come. I've always believed that families are supposed to be places of warmth and safety. But in mine, affection was a limited resource, reserved almost entirely for my brother, Trent. From childhood, my mother, Vera, treated him like the golden son. He was praised for things as small as remembering to feed the dog, while I could spend hours helping her in the kitchen and barely get a nod. My father, Clark, wasn't cruel, just distant. His silence was its own kind of betrayal. Trent grew up entitled, always certain that the world, and our parents, would bend to his will. When he got in trouble at school, my parents laughed it off. When I once came home crying because a teacher said I was too quiet, my mother told me, "Maybe if you were more like your brother, people would like you more." Those words stuck with me longer than any childhood memory should. As adults, nothing changed. When Trent married Rita, my parents welcomed her like a daughter they'd always wanted. Rita wasn't kind to me, but she knew how to charm them, bringing gifts, cooking my mother's favorite meals, flattering my father until he smiled like a boy. She made it clear that I didn't belong in their version of the family. Family dinners at their house always followed the same pattern. My parents sat near Trent and Rita, laughing about their latest vacation or Trent's new business venture. I'd sit quietly, cutting food into small bites, pretending not to notice when they spoke over me. The only person who ever met my eyes with sincerity was Finn, Trent's 12-year-old son. He had Adam's gentle patience, a kindness that skipped a generation. After Adam's death, I went to my parents for emotional support, but their sympathy felt forced. "You'll manage," my mother said, as if grief were just another household task to be completed. My father hugged me briefly and changed the subject to Trent's promotion at work. It was clear they didn't want to deal with my sadness. I was a reminder of everything imperfect in their carefully arranged world. Still, for Lila's sake, I tried to maintain contact. I wanted her to know her grandparents, even if they didn't deserve her. Whenever we visited, Vera would praise Trent's family and give Lila a cold smile, like she was doing her a favor by acknowledging her at all. I often caught Lila glancing at Finn, who quietly rolled his eyes when adults weren't watching, as if to say, "I know this is unfair too." The favoritism wasn't just emotional, it was material. When my parents gifted Trent a new car for his anniversary, I received a set of used dinner plates for mine. "You're practical," my mother said. "You don't need flashy things." But what I needed was something they never offered: respect. Deep down, I kept hoping for their approval, even though I knew it would never come. What I didn't realize then was that their favoritism wouldn't just wound me, it would one day hurt my daughter too. When I think of Adam, I don't just remember my husband, I remember the feeling of safety. The kind of safety that comes when someone looks at you and sees not what you lack, but what you are. Adam had a quiet confidence that filled every room he entered. He wasn't loud, wasn't boastful, but his steadiness made people trust him instantly. He worked as a senior account manager at a beverage company in Denver that specialized in juices and smoothies. It was a job he loved, not because of money or position, but because he enjoyed helping small cafe owners and stores grow their businesses. I used to tease him that he treated every client like family. He'd smile and say, "That's the secret. People remember kindness more than discounts." Our mornings were simple but perfect. Adam would wake up early, make coffee, and pack Lila's school lunch while humming an old song. He loved preparing her strawberry milkshakes on weekends, thick, creamy, and always topped with too much whipped cream. Lila adored him. Sometimes I'd watch the two of them sitting on the kitchen floor, coloring, giggling, sharing cookies. That laughter used to fill every corner of our home. Then came the day everything changed. It was late October, the air cold, the sky gray. Adam had a client meeting outside the city and promised he'd be home by dinner. Lila wanted him to bring her favorite chocolate muffins, and he said, "You got it, sweetheart." That was the last time she heard his voice. I got the call at 7:43 p.m. from an unfamiliar number. The voice on the other end was calm, but heavy. "Mrs. Grant, this is Officer Taylor with the Denver Police Department. I'm so sorry there's been an accident." My breath caught in my throat. For a second, I thought I misheard him. But his next words shattered me. "Your husband, Adam Grant, was pronounced dead at the scene." Time didn't move after that. I remember falling to the floor, clutching the phone like it could bring him back. Lila was in her room drawing. I could hear her humming. I had no idea how to tell her that the man who made her world bright was never coming home. The days that followed blurred into one another. The funeral, the condolences, the hollow "he was a good man" speeches. People came, hugged, cried, and then left. But grief stayed behind. At night, I'd lie awake on his side of the bed, breathing in the faint scent of his cologne, trying to pretend he was still there. Lila would crawl into my arms, asking, "Mommy, when is Daddy coming back from heaven?" And I'd whisper lies I hated myself for. "Soon. Baby, he's watching over us." Money became a concern soon after. Adam had life insurance, but it wasn't much. I was terrified of losing everything. Our home, our stability, the last traces of him. Then one morning his manager called. He said the company wanted to honor Adam's memory by offering me a position. "You have the education and communication skills to take over his accounts," he explained. "We'd like to help your family stay secure." That moment felt like both mercy and pain. Taking his job meant stepping into his world, the one he had built with care and joy. But I said yes. Not for me, but for Lila. For Adam. Because I knew he'd want me to keep going. I didn't realize it then, but saying yes would lead me into a chain of choices that would change everything I thought I knew about family, loyalty, and love. When the call came from Adam's company, I was still living in a haze of grief. I hadn't returned to work, hadn't even unpacked the condolence flowers that kept arriving and wilting. Everything felt meaningless. So when Mark, Adam's manager, asked if he could come by to talk, I hesitated. But something in his tone told me it wasn't just about sympathy. He arrived the next afternoon, holding a folder and a look that was half sorrow, half hope. "Rena," he began gently, "I know nothing can make this easier. Adam was one of our best. He cared about people, not just numbers." I nodded, unable to trust my voice. He went on, "The company's leadership wants to help. We'd like to offer you a position in Adam's department." For a moment, I thought I misheard him. "Me?" I asked quietly. "Yes," he said. "You have the communication background, and Adam spoke highly of how you helped him with client reports and presentations. We believe you can continue his accounts. It's partly in his memory and partly because we see potential in you." The words made my chest tighten. It was an incredible offer, but also terrifying. I hadn't worked full-time in years. My mind was scattered, my emotions unpredictable. How could I walk into his office, sit in his chair, see his name on every email? That night, I sat on the couch staring at Adam's old briefcase. It was still by the door, untouched since the accident. Lila was asleep upstairs, hugging the stuffed bear Adam had given her. I whispered into the quiet, "What should I do, Adam?" In my heart, I already knew the answer. Adam believed in perseverance. He never backed down from responsibility. I could almost hear him saying, "You can do this, Rena. You're stronger than you think." The next morning, I called Mark back. My voice trembled slightly, but I said, "I'll do it. I'll take the position." The company welcomed me with warmth I hadn't expected. They started me as an assistant account manager, a role that allowed me to train under one of Adam's colleagues while slowly handling his client portfolio. My first day was surreal. His desk still had a faint coffee ring from his mug, and the plant he'd kept by the window was barely alive. I revived it, watering it as if it were symbolic, a small way to keep him close. The first few weeks were hard. I had to learn fast, balance work and Lila, and hold myself together through waves of emotion. But for every fear that whispered, "You can't do this," there was a louder memory of Adam's voice saying, "You must." In time, the office became less a place of loss and more a symbol of continuation. I wasn't just working for survival anymore. I was carrying forward the legacy of the man who had built my world and trusting myself to keep it standing. It had been 6 months since I joined the company, and my life had slowly begun to find a rhythm again. Between work and parenting, every day felt like a tightrope walk, but I was managing. When my supervisor, Rachel, called me into her office one morning, I assumed it was about a project update. Instead, she smiled and said, "Rena, the company wants you to attend a 3-day client conference in Phoenix with a return flight scheduled on the 4th morning. It's an incredible opportunity. You'll be representing us alongside senior managers." For a moment, I was proud. Then fear followed. 3 days? I repeated, hesitating. Rachel nodded. "I know it's short notice, but you've earned this. It'll look great on your record." That night, I sat at the kitchen table, staring at Lila's homework spread across the surface. She was coloring a picture of a house, bright blue with flowers out front. "Mommy, can we go to the park this weekend?" she asked. I forced a smile. "Sweetheart, Mommy might have to go on a short trip for work. Just for a few days." Her little face fell. "Can I come with you?" My heart tightened. "I wish you could, baby. But it's far, and I'll be in meetings all day." The only option that made sense was leaving her with my parents. I dreaded the idea, but I told myself it would be temporary. Maybe, just maybe, my mother would act differently toward her granddaughter. I called that evening. When Vera answered, her tone was sharp as ever. Yes. Mom, I have to travel for work. Could you please keep Lila for a few days? There was a long pause. I could almost hear her displeasure breathing through the line. Rena, we're not running a daycare. You should have planned better. I know, Mom, I said quietly. But this is important. I don't have anyone else. Another pause. Then, with a sigh of reluctant superiority, she said, Fine. Bring her. But she'll have to behave herself. The next morning, I packed Lila's favorite clothes, her sketchbook, and the little pink bunny she slept with every night. She was excited at first, thinking of staying with her grandparents. Will Grandma make cookies like last time? She asked. I didn't have the heart to tell her that Vera's version of last time involved criticism and cold stares. Instead, I smiled. Maybe, honey. When we arrived, the air inside my parents' house felt just as heavy as always, too quiet, too judgmental. Trent was there, lounging on the couch, scrolling through his phone. His wife, Rita, gave me a fake smile. Well, look who's climbing the corporate ladder, she said sweetly, her tone dipped in poison. Just doing my best, I replied, keeping my voice even. Vera came out from the kitchen, wiping her hands on a towel. You could have at least given us more notice, she scolded. I appreciate this, Mom. It's just 3 days, I said softly. Lila ran to hug her, but Vera's response was half-hearted. Be careful with your things, Lila. Don't touch what you don't need to. My stomach twisted. I kissed my daughter's forehead and whispered, Mommy will be back soon, okay? Be good. As I drove away, I looked in the rearview mirror. Lila stood by the doorway, waving. Vera's hand rested stiffly on her shoulder. I told myself it would be fine. 3 days. What could go wrong in 3 days? I didn't know then that I was leaving her in the hands of cruelty. I thought I'd already escaped. The first day after I left, Lila called me before bedtime. Her voice was small but cheerful. Grandma said, I can sleep in the guest room, she told me. It's cold, but Finn gave me his extra blanket. I smiled, grateful that Finn was there. Be good, sweetheart. I'll be home soon. I hung up feeling lighter, convincing myself everything would be fine. But things began to change. By the second day, Lila's tone sounded different. She said she was helping Grandma clean and that Rita had asked her to tidy up the living room. I frowned, but didn't want to make her nervous. Don't do too much, baby, I said. You're just a child. Back at my parents' house, Lila's days had turned into a quiet form of punishment. Vera treated her not as a granddaughter, but as an inconvenience. She made her scrub dishes, wipe counters, and pick up after everyone. When Lila got tired, Vera accused her of being lazy. At your age, I was already helping my mother. You need to learn responsibility, she'd say sharply. Rita took advantage too. Lila, bring me some water, she'd order while watching TV. And don't spill it this time. Her son Finn would watch with guilt and whisper, you don't have to listen to her. But Lila, being the polite child she was, simply said, it's okay. Clark stayed mostly silent, pretending not to notice. He'd sit at the dining table, flipping through newspapers, pretending that the sight of his granddaughter wiping the floor didn't bother him. Trent occasionally scolded Vera for yelling too much, but it was always half-hearted. Ma, she's just a kid, he'd say. But Vera would glare at him, and he'd retreat into silence. By the third day, Lila was exhausted. Her small hands were sore from dish soap and scrubbing. She missed home, her toys, her routine. That night, she quietly cried herself to sleep, holding the pink bunny I'd packed for her. Finn heard her from the hallway and came in. It's okay, he whispered. When Aunt Rena comes back, I'll tell her everything. On the fourth morning, Vera found a small stain on the kitchen counter and exploded. I told you to clean this properly. You're careless, just like your mother. Lila's eyes filled with tears as she stammered an apology. Rita chuckled softly from the living room. Maybe she needs a real lesson, she muttered under her breath. Vera's words became harsher with each passing hour. She called Lila useless, messy, spoiled. She'd send her back to redo tasks again and again. The house that should have been a place of family warmth had turned into a prison. On the fourth day, the very day Rena's return flight was delayed, the morning began like the others, quiet and cold. Later that same afternoon, Lila accidentally dropped a fork on the floor while setting the table. The noise startled Vera, who turned sharply. "Can't you do anything right?" she shouted. She grabbed the girl by the arm so tightly that it left a faint mark. Finn saw this from across the room, his young face pale with fear. "Grandma, stop," he said, but Vera ignored him. That night, Finn made up his mind. He sneaked into his room, locked the door, and held his phone in trembling hands. "Aunt Rena," he whispered as the call connected, "something bad is happening here." The morning of the fifth day began like the others, quiet, cold, and tense. Lila woke up early to the sound of her grandmother's sharp voice from the kitchen. "Get up. You've been sleeping enough. Come help me." She quickly slipped out of bed, still wearing the oversized t-shirt I had packed for her. Her little hands trembled as she folded her blanket and hurried toward the kitchen. Vera was already irritated. She had found a few crumbs on the dining table and was scolding Rita for not cleaning properly, though it had been Lila who did the work the night before. "If this girl can't do simple things, maybe she shouldn't stay here," Vera muttered, her words dripping with venom. Rita sipped her coffee lazily, glancing at Lila. "Maybe she needs to learn the hard way," she said mockingly. "At least Finn doesn't act like this." Lila swallowed hard. "I'll clean better, Grandma," she whispered, trying to make peace. "Go get the milk from the fridge," Vera ordered. "And be careful this time." The kitchen smelled faintly of bleach and burnt toast. Lila opened the refrigerator and saw the heavy stainless steel jug sitting on the top shelf. It was filled with milk, almost full. She reached up on her tiptoes, fingers brushing the cool metal surface. For a second, she managed to lift it down safely and place it on the counter. Her small chest rose and fell with relief. Then, as she turned to close the fridge, her elbow nudged the jug ever so slightly. It happened in an instant, an awful clatter of metal against tile. The jug hit the floor with a loud crash, milk splashing across the tiles, flowing like a pale river across Vera's spotless kitchen. Lila froze, her mouth open, heart pounding in terror. Vera's eyes went wide with fury. "What have you done?" she screamed. "I am sorry, Grandma," Lila cried, stepping back. "It was an accident, I swear." But Vera didn't want to hear it. Her face twisted with rage as she grabbed a towel, threw it down, and began shouting. "You useless child! You can't even handle a simple jug? You're just like your mother, careless and stupid." Rita stood by the counter, smirking. "Told you," she muttered. Finn rushed in from the living room, alarmed by the shouting. "Grandma, stop yelling. She didn't mean to. Stay out of this," Vera barked. Then, in a fit of uncontrollable anger, Vera bent down, picked up the very same stainless steel jug, now dented and dripping milk, and raised it high. "Grandma, please," Lila cried, covering her head with her hands. The sound of metal striking flesh echoed through the room. The jug hit Lila's head with a dull thud, sending her stumbling backward. She fell to her knees, crying out in pain. Finn screamed, "Grandma, what's wrong with you?" and ran to her side. Vera froze for a moment, realizing what she had done, but pride drowned out guilt. "That's what happens when children don't listen," she snapped coldly. Blood trickled through Lila's hairline. Finn's eyes filled with tears as he pressed a napkin to her wound. "We need to call someone," he shouted, panicked. But Vera snatched the phone from the counter. "You'll do no such thing," she said, her voice trembling with rage. "She's fine. Stop crying like a fool." Rita peeked in, her expression half interested, half amused. "You might want to clean that before it stains the floor," she said to Vera. That was the moment Finn knew he couldn't stay silent. As Vera stormed off to get a mop, Finn helped Lila sit up and whispered, "I'll fix this. I promise." He guided her to the sofa, tucked a small towel under her head, and waited until the house grew quiet again. When everyone finally went to their rooms, Finn crept to his own, hands shaking. He took his phone from under his pillow and dialed the only person he trusted. When I answered, My voice was tired from travel, but alert. Finn, what's wrong? He hesitated, then whispered, Aunt Rena, Grandma hurt Lila. Please come home. My heart stopped. What do you mean, hurt her? She hit her with the steel jug. She's bleeding, Finn cried. I was already on my feet, grabbing my bag. I'm on my way, I said, voice breaking. Don't let her out of your sight. I hung up and ran to the window, my body trembling with a mix of terror and fury. I booked the earliest flight back to Denver. In that moment, I wasn't an employee, a widow, or a daughter. I was a mother, and my child needed me. The moment I ended the call with Finn, I felt a surge of panic unlike anything I'd ever known. My mind couldn't fully process his words. Grandma hurt Lila. It didn't make sense. Vera was strict, yes, but violent? I refused to believe it for the first few seconds. But the tremor in Finn's voice told me this wasn't a misunderstanding. Something terrible had happened. I called him back as I stuffed clothes into a small bag. Finn, listen to me, I said, trying to steady my voice. Is she conscious? Is she breathing okay? Yes, he whispered. She's crying, but she's scared. Grandma won't let anyone call for help. Grandpa's just sitting there doing nothing. I clenched my jaw. You did the right thing calling me. I'm coming right now. Don't let anyone hurt her again. I hung up and immediately called my supervisor, Rachel. My voice cracked as I said, I need to leave. Something's happened to my daughter. Rachel didn't ask questions. Go, she said softly. Family first. I'll handle everything here. Within 20 minutes, I was at the airport. I don't remember the flight, only flashes of it. My hands shaking, my mind replaying every second of that call. I kept imagining Lila's small face streaked with tears, her hair matted, her eyes filled with confusion and pain. My stomach churned as the plane touched down in Denver. From the airport, I drove straight to my parents' house. Every red light felt like an enemy, every minute a cruel delay. I parked so fast that I nearly left the keys in the ignition. The street looked normal, quiet, nothing like the war zone my heart felt. When I reached the front porch, I saw her. Lila was sitting outside on the steps, clutching her pink bunny, her head wrapped in a blood-stained towel. Finn sat beside her, holding her hand protectively. My knees nearly gave out at the sight. I ran to her, pulling her into my arms. Oh my God, baby. What did they do to you? I whispered, my voice breaking. She looked up at me with tearful eyes and said, Mommy, I didn't mean to drop the milk. That sentence shattered me completely. I pulled out my phone, dialing 911 with trembling fingers. This is Rena Grant, I said to the operator, my voice fierce now. My mother assaulted my child. Send the police and paramedics right now. Justice was no longer an idea, it had just become a mission. The police arrived within 15 minutes, sirens slicing through the stillness of the neighborhood. Red and blue lights flashed across the white walls of my parents' house, the same house that had once held my childhood dreams and now felt like a crime scene. Lila clung to me tightly, her tiny hands gripping my coat as if I might disappear again. Finn stood beside us, pale but steady, his courage holding the entire moment together. Two officers stepped out of the patrol car. One of them, Officer Grant, approached me gently. Ma'am, are you the one who called? Yes, I said, my voice trembling but firm. My mother hit my daughter on the head with a metal jug. She's injured. He nodded and gestured to the other officer to check on Lila. We'll take care of her right away. Paramedics are on their way. When the ambulance pulled up, the flashing red lights reflected in Lila's teary eyes. A paramedic crouched beside her, unwrapping the towel from her head. The sight of the bruise and dried blood made my stomach twist. It's a contusion, the medic said softly. We'll clean it and take her to the hospital for further checks. I kissed her forehead and whispered, You're safe now, baby. Inside the house, Vera emerged from the kitchen, clearly startled by the commotion. What's going on? She demanded. I turned to her, shaking with anger. You know exactly what's going on. You hit my child. Vera's expression hardened. That little brat was careless. Someone has to teach her discipline. The officer's tone turned sharp. Ma'am, that's enough. You're under arrest for child abuse and assault. She gasped as he read her rights, her voice rising in disbelief. You can't do this. She's lying. I'm her grandmother. The officer replied coldly, and that doesn't give you the right to hurt her. He placed handcuffs around her wrists as she struggled, shouting my name like a curse. Rena, you ungrateful girl. How could you do this to your own mother? I stared at her, tears burning my eyes. You did this to yourself. Clark, my father, stood frozen in the hallway. Vera, he murmured weakly, as though unsure which side he belonged to. When I looked at him, all I saw was decades of silence, silence that allowed cruelty to grow. Trent appeared from the living room, his face pale. Rena, don't press charges. She didn't mean. I cut him off sharply. She hit an 8-year-old child with a steel jug, Trent. You think that's an accident? The officer turned to him. Sir, you and your wife will both need to come down for questioning. There are reports of the child being forced into household labor. Rita, who had been hiding near the stairs, gasped. That's ridiculous. We were just teaching her manners. The officers ignored her protests and escorted all three of them, Vera, Trent, and Rita, out of the house. Finn watched, his eyes wide but unflinching. I put a hand on his shoulder and whispered, You did the right thing, sweetheart. You saved her. At the hospital, Lila's scans came back clear. No internal bleeding, just bruising. When the doctor said she'd make a full recovery, I finally exhaled. My body felt light and heavy all at once. A week later, I stood in court as the state pursued charges. I testified, my voice shaking only once, when I described hearing my daughter say, I didn't mean to drop the milk. Lila bravely gave her own short statement, holding my hand the entire time. The verdict came 2 weeks later. Vera was sentenced to 5 years in state prison, plus a restraining order protecting me and Lila. Trent received 1 year of probation and mandatory counseling for neglecting to report abuse. Rita was given 6 months of probation and community service for exploiting a minor. When the judge's gavel struck, I felt years of buried pain lift from my chest. Justice didn't erase the scars, but it validated them. It told the world that what we endured mattered. As I left the courthouse holding Lila's hand, she looked up at me and whispered, Mommy, is it over now? I knelt down and kissed her forehead. Yes, baby, I said softly. It's finally over. But deep inside, I knew it was also a beginning, one where we would finally live free, on our own terms, without fear. Life, after the trial, felt strangely quiet. For the first time in years, silence didn't mean fear, it meant peace. Lila and I moved back into our small home in Denver, where everything once belonged to Adam. His photo still hung in the hallway, and every morning Lila would stop to whisper, Good morning, Daddy. I'd smile, knowing that in some way, he was still guiding us. Lila started therapy soon after the incident. The first few sessions were difficult. She didn't like talking about what happened. But her therapist, a kind woman named Dr. Hayes, helped her open up through drawing and music. Your daughter has a natural gift, Dr. Hayes told me one day. You should nurture it. That small encouragement changed everything. I enrolled Lila in the school's music program. She began singing again, first softly in her room, then confidently on stage at the school talent show. The night she performed her first solo, I cried through the entire song. Her voice was tender but strong, the voice of a child who had seen pain but refused to be defined by it. When the audience gave her a standing ovation, she ran straight into my arms afterward and whispered, We did it, Mommy. At work, life also took a turn for the better. Months of hard work and dedication finally paid off when my supervisor called me into her office. Rena, Rachel said with a proud smile, you've exceeded every expectation. The company's promoting you to client relations manager. It felt surreal. I thought of Adam, the man whose job had once been my lifeline, now the legacy that helped me rebuild our future. I walked out of that office with tears in my eyes and called Lila. Guess what, baby? I said. Mommy got promoted. Her joyful squeal echoed through the phone. That means we can get pizza tonight. We celebrated with laughter, pizza, and music, just the two of us, dancing in the living room under the soft yellow light. Our scars hadn't vanished, but they had healed into strength. The pain, the injustice, the heartbreak, all of it had forged us into something unbreakable. I tucked Lila into bed that night, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "We're safe now." And for the first time in years, I truly believed it. If you felt Rena and Lila's journey touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more powerful real-life stories.